Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for staying to 4:30 to join us in this very exciting panel discussion. We're going to talk about 5G. We're going to talk about the effects of 5G and what we can do with 5G. And with me, and they are the main stars actually, I'm just the minder and keeping them, is Mr. Navin Vohra, Ludvig, Paul, and Mustafa, and they are from their respective companies. You can see them on the screen. They are all luminaries in this area, very experienced, and they know what they're talking about. Now, I invite you to ask any questions that you want. Is there a system that is, if there's a system to SMS us the questions, then please do so. If not, I think we'll try to leave some room at the end to take some questions from the audience. Without further ado, I'd like to just kickstart. I think that we have all heard about how 5G will bring about greater connectivity, greater speed, and how consumers and companies would actually benefit. But really, I'm really wondering, I'm a technology lawyer. I'm not really a techie. I don't build things. I don't quite know, for example, how fast 5G exactly is, or what can consumers like myself and a lot of the members of the audience can actually do with that kind of speed and connectivity. So why don't you tell us something about this? So maybe we started off with Ludvig, maybe?
Okay, thank you, Gilbert, and really exciting to be here. So for myself, I'm Ludvig. I'm taking care of cloud infrastructure for this region, so Southeast Asia, India, as well as Australia, New Zealand, and what is really exciting is about you. The exciting thing is that for 2G, 3G, and 4G, it was really about connecting people, so connecting people like ourselves. But 5G is really also about that, but even more so connecting industries and really creating a new industry out of 5G. And there's no other technology of the Gs that mean so much for economic growth as 5G. So it's really exciting times, and it's really exciting to be here with you because this conference is really about creating those ecosystems.
Yeah, but what's some of the concrete examples that actually we can put 5G to use to? I mean, we've heard about the Internet of Things, we've heard about the speed and the connectivity, but what are some examples? Mustafa, would you like to share?
Yep, this is Mustafa. I'm working for Siemens, and we are trying to develop and implement digital solutions for road traffic. We were always talking about data, right? So now we have, Paul has smartwatch, I have smartwatch, and I'm sure most of you have smartwatch. All these things, they generate data. In the future, in the very near future, more things will generate data. Our fridge, our vacuum cleaner, or all the other things. But of course, for all these data, we need speed and we need bandwidth. So that's why I think that's 5G is coming into the picture. Without 5G, I think it is not possible to connect all these things and to make interaction between these devices.
Yeah, in your day job, you run the intelligent traffic systems at Siemens. I mean, how does 5G interact with the things that you do, number one? Do you see any examples of governments anywhere or any municipalities anywhere introducing that kind of, or laying the foundations for the use of 5G to run traffic systems, for example? Are we doing it in Singapore, do you know?
My department called this intelligent traffic system. Even now, we are trying to really manage traffic in a smart way. I'm not sure if some of you have noticed that we have some lines on the ground in the intersections. Basically, these are sensors. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to detect the cars approaching an intersection so that we can adjust traffic lights so that you can have more green time so you can reach home faster. Even now, we are trying to do it. But I think with 5G, we can do more. So when I have sensors on specific intersection, I only have information or data about this specific intersection. So I don't know if I don't have sensors on the next, then I don't have information. But when 5G is enabled, when all our cars are equipped with these kind of sensors, then they can transmit their location data, their speed data, their endpoint location destination. So I can easily manage the city traffic and urban-wide. For example, island-wide, I can control the traffic. These things will be possible with 5G.
Well, I know that in Singapore we are trying to have ERP version 2.0. And I know that the technology that seems to be reported in the media is really a satellite-based kind of technology. Now, as between satellite-based technology and 5G, which uses terrestrial base stations, I mean, what is the difference? Does it mean anything? Do companies, do governments, or vehicle manufacturers, do we gain any advantage rather than relying on a satellite versus using 5G?
Because 5G is not available now, so the satellite-based technology can be used for this type of tolling. Actually, Singapore wants to change of type of tolling. Now, there are some fixed countries. When we pass some country, we pay some amount of money. In the future, in the moment that you leave your garage, apartment, in the moment that the satellites see you, the taximeter, let's say, will start kicking. But in the future, there are a lot of high-rise buildings in Singapore, so that GPS signal may not reach everywhere. In these areas, we can get support from 5G. Or in the future, maybe we can completely transfer this tolling into 5G technology.
I see. Oh, okay. Well, so from a consumer perspective, Paul, I suppose, right? We've heard some examples of 5G being used, and that's really not quite consumer in that sense. It's always about perhaps a car being fitted out with a device or a sensor, or some government or municipality putting in some sensors. What does 5G mean to a consumer then?
I think you've gone the wrong way, Gilbert. So I'll give you a different perspective. First of all, it must be strange. You all know Huawei, right? Hopefully you all know that Paul's not Chinese, right? I've been here 11 years. It must be strange as a CTO of the company. 5G has nothing to do with speed.
Okay.
There's nothing to do with speed. How many gigs do you need to your handset? You don't. 5G is a platform for transformation, okay? A platform for transformation. We can do a lot of things in industry, just as Mustafa mentioned, yes? We can do a lot of other transformational things, but let's start with the first one. If the traffic is growing, every person here is using how many? 10, 20, 30 gigs of data. Next week, 40 gigs of data, 50 gigs of data, right? The telecom operator, Singtel, StarHub, M1, TPG, they build the infrastructure. When they build it using 4G technology, there is a natural capacity limit. Well, what happens when the demand hits that limit using 4G technology? The operators have to find more sites. There's no more HDB buildings. You've got to keep putting more and more antennas everywhere. You've got to do things. It costs a lot of money. So the first business model, when you start with 5G, here's the limit of 4G. 5G starts here. Not about speed, about the capacity of the network to service demand you are asking for consumers. So the first business model is, it's very simple, right? Everybody wants money. 5G is cheaper than 4G if you have growth. It's the cheapest technology you'll ever have. Cost per bit, watts per megahertz, doesn't matter how you want to consume it, OPEX or CAPEX. It will fund the future. First business model. Second business model really is just what Mustafa has mentioned, and that is, let's suppose you want to connect and fix the traffic in Singapore. It only happens one way, when everything is connected. So how many things have you got there? You've got some shoes, socks, shirt, that. Maybe 40 items on you, right? 40 items times 300 people. So we've got a couple of thousand. There's 15,000 people in here. We've got close to 1 million connections. 4G won't do that. You want to connect all the cars? You have 1 million cars. How many sensors within the car? How many traffic lights? How many pedestrian crossings? Here's a vision of the future with 5G. Gilbert, you just said, I want to go home. It knows it'll take you 3 minutes to walk to the front, to go down the steps, to hop in your car. Yes? It knows, Ludvig, you're parked at the other end, so it'll take you 12 minutes. So will it arrange all the traffic automatically and tell everybody where they should and shouldn't go? We don't need traffic lights. We don't need pedestrian crossings, because it will know. The analytics will know, and that can only happen when you've connected everything and you need 5G. You need to pull this into a cloud, and then you need to provide AI-based solutions. That's what 5G can do in the future. That's not now. We've got a lot of steps to get there. But this is an example of where you're asking how the consumers can benefit. Well, we're consuming this 5G technology in a different way. We're not using our handphones to watch YouTube, right? We're doing different things. So the operator has a different position in the whole business. He's not just selling SIM cards. He's enabling Siemens and cloud-based services and the ERP systems. And we believe, together I believe with Ericsson and Nokia and the others, that this is the positioning of 5G, and that's why we're all so passionate about it.
Yeah, but you know, that sparks a little bit of a concern for me, right? Because the thing is that obviously when you talk about capacity and you talk in the example that you gave, there's a lot of data that is actually being gathered about a person, what we wear, what we use, where we go, what kind of device that we have in our pocket. Hopefully not the kind of data we transmit, right? But there will be some kind of data that needs a context, where you are, your location data, for example. And I need to tell whatever system it is where I want to go so that it can calculate for me the most efficient route. The issue that I am concerned about really is that with such a great mass of data, number one, will we ever suffer a data overload as humans? Number two, who gets to use that data? Number three, who profits from the use of that data? I don't know if any one of you wanted to share some thoughts on that.
Maybe I'll jump in because 5G is actually not so far away. It's really happening now. So we've seen in Singapore the announcement is to do this next year. This was announced earlier this year by the minister, and we saw this morning that the government is putting in even more investment into launching 5G, and actually even today in this hall there is 5G live. And you can see that in the Singtel booth. So if you go and have a look at that, you can see some use cases that we were talking about. And there's quite interesting use cases. So one of the use cases, and we're working together with Singtel as well as with Singapore Poly, where we're putting together new use cases that make use of 5G. And one of these use cases is around AR, because AR will really use a lot of data. So in conjunction with what you mentioned before, it's about connecting a lot of different new devices as well as people. And if you have a look at this AR demo, you will see that you have a very, very smooth experience compared to using 4G. So in fact, it's a lot of things. So it's much more capacity. It's the possibility for higher speeds as well as lower latency. So in the demo that's here, you will see that you will have 3 times lower latency. So if you try a speed test on your phone today, you get about 30 milliseconds or so. This one is sub 10 milliseconds. If you look at the speed that you get on your phone, it's maybe up to 100. There it's gigabit speeds. So it's really fantastic things that you can do with that data. And if you talk about who benefits from the data, it's really everyone. Because all of us, we don't want to spend more every month for the amount of data that we use. And actually neither do our customers. They want to be able to provide a great service for you and provide more data for you at the similar price as today. So this is really what 5G is about. So it benefits all of us. And talking about that, we did an investigation for Singapore. We did a consumer research, which is on our homepage, which you can have a look at. It shows that for 5G in Singapore, in fact, there's 7 out of 10 people in Singapore are really excited about 5G already today. But what's maybe even more important is that 1 out of 5 person in Singapore will actually shift from their current carrier to another one if they're not providing 5G. So it's important to all of us. And maybe the most attractive one is that 20% of these people also are saying that they're prepared to pay more. So it provides really a benefit for all of us, including vendors and customers.
Yeah, I can clearly see the benefit. I can clearly, appreciate the convenience and the new services that may come about. But, there's something still nagging at the back of my head. It's like really, I'm contributing to the big, great data pool. Somebody else may be using the data pool to even look at it and says, okay, with all this kind of data, with all this kind of information, and analysis done on it, I am now able to offer this new service and make yet even more money, right? Now, as a consumer, I'm not quite sure I'm going to be paid for contributing to that data set. on contributing to the data pool. I think it's really a different paradigm in looking at who benefits and who gets to use that data. But Navin, I mean, I want to turn my attention to you now. In the sense that CommScope as a company, you offer solutions and communication solutions to your customers. I mean, we've heard some of the use cases. We heard what Ludvig and Paul shared. From a commercial organization perspective, that's really not, for example, into consumer services. What would you say to your customers if should they go on the 5G bandwagon?
So my name is Navin Vohra, and I lead the service provider sales for Asia Pacific for CommScope. I'm based in Gurgaon. So we in CommScope, we provide infrastructure solutions for wireless, wireline, and for enterprises. So this is basically connectivity solutions, for the wireless network or the wireline network or the enterprise network. Our view on 5G is actually a network of networks. It's a convergence of the wireless and the wireline network with deeper fiber penetration in both. In terms of the capabilities of 5G, I think my fellow panelists talked a lot of the use cases in terms of capacity and in terms of speed and virtual reality. What I would like to add is smart cities, right? It is expected that 75% of the world's population will actually live in cities by the year 2050. Now, that's a huge amount of people living in cities. 5G is going to be an enabler technology for these people to actually live in an efficient manner, right? For the government to provide efficient services to this population that is going to live in the cities. With the absence of 5G, I don't know how this would be done, right? Because the governments too, right, will require a very high capacity, very high speed, low latency system, because it's not just connecting humans, it's connecting all the things in the cities, right? And 5G is a platform, is an environment which will help connect all this stuff. From an infrastructure solutions perspective, we at CommScope, specifically on the wireless and the wireline networks, we announced in MWC, antenna solutions that are capable of supporting 3.5 gigahertz frequency band. Now, 3.5 gigahertz frequency band, for those of you who do not know, is one of the accepted bands across Asia Pacific on which 5G is going to be launched. So you do need antenna solutions that can support this particular frequency band. We also announced in collaboration with Nokia an active passive antenna solution, which basically helps to optimize the space on the tower, as well as give the capacity and prepare the operators to launch 5G in an efficient manner. So those are some of the solutions that we will offer.
Oh,
Sorry, if I can
please.
jump in. So Navin mentioned cities, and I have to mention a 5G use case which really blew me away. I don't know if you saw this. This was a couple of weeks ago on Reuters. So Reuters was presenting a case of a remote kidney delivery by drone. I don't know if you saw that, but I thought that was, wow, now technology has really come so far that we're using critical deliveries of medical supplies. In this case, it was a kidney delivered by drone. But there was one problem with that delivery, and it was that it was a limitation of 3 kilometers because it was using a Wi-Fi solution. So imagine if you do this with cellular infrastructure, and as Paul mentioned, it's all about capacity. If you're going to use cellular infrastructure for this, you have to have something that has really good capacity and good latency, which is what 5G is about. And we all live more in cities. And we can't trust that there will be no traffic jam. And imagine this, we're doing deliveries of this with 5G. I think it's awesome.
Can we carry on this theme? Because what you've picked up on with the drones, yes? Gatwick Airport, Changi Airport, problems with drones, right? Just now you mentioned the challenges in communicating with drones. So if all drones are only connected with 5G, every drone, we know who it is, we know where it is, Its coverage is ubiquitous. With the beamforming technology, you can guarantee connectivity island-wide. You can guarantee it will not go into space that it should not, like the airports, or military, or other sensitive areas. You can prioritize those that are for critical medical requirements. Just as everybody is controlled today, you all register for a phone, right? When you apply for a mobile phone or a SIM card, the same thing. So you don't have Wi-Fi based solutions or other based. You don't have rogue drones. Everything is controlled. You need a license properly. So I think what 5G opens up is an opportunity in a lot of these industrial segments because of one thing, and that's standardization. And part of standardization comes, coming back to your point, okay, it wasn't specific around security, but privacy security has now been built because we've never talked about this. For 50 years, having communications, nobody's ever had a global consortium to say, we should all talk about data privacy. We should all talk about how systems and networks should be secured. We've never had this discussion. We've always trusted the operators to do the right thing, always, right? It's a lot of these OTTs that come in, you're just worried about your data. You travel a lot, I'm sure, Gilbert, right? Every time you go to another country and you click on Google, what does it say? Can I please know your location, yes or no? As soon as you press yes, game over. It now knows the last piece of information it needed about Gilbert, okay? So that's all gone. There's 1.7 million apps, uncontrolled, unregulated. No software definition for the APIs or the coding structure or anything. You know why I'm heading this direction. But the point is, we've never had these discussions as an industry, right? We've always relied on the 3GPP and GSMA to provide standardization and ETSI and the ITU, and that's what we've done. And the vendors have always collaborated together for the benefit of the industry, together with the telecom companies. So we believe, the right party is always the telecom operator. I know we have some challenges and differences perhaps in Germany, but that's for different reasons, okay? There's no other country like Germany that has this Industry 4.0 capability in manufacturing. So for them to do different things with spectrum and everything else, you could consider that a different case. But the principles of ubiquitous of spectrum here in Singapore, you need to give as much spectrum as possible. You need 100 meg in 3.5. You need a gig in millimeter wave. And if you do those things, the possibilities to do things like drones are amazing.
I am enthralled and, really, I appreciate all the possibilities. But, 90% of the economy in Singapore, 80-90% of the economy in Singapore is really driven by small, medium enterprises, right? And our SMEs are in the service industry, some of them are in the manufacturing, So how would these industries deploy or wish to deploy 5G in order to help themselves? Because all the systems that we've talked about just now are really large municipal type of systems where you can run a fleet of drones, or you can control the drones, or large companies in manufacturing sectors. So is there something for the small and medium enterprises when 5G comes about?
So one of the initial applications of 5G is actually private networks. And in order to deploy a network, right, there are three big challenges that are there, right? And we call them PBS. It's power, backhaul, and site access. Now, in case of an enterprise, all these three challenges are under the control of the enterprise: power, backhaul, and site access. So therefore, the application of 5G in the enterprise to provide a complete wireless network, which is much faster, much more reliable, and highly secure as compared to Wi-Fi, right, is what is driving that particular application for private networks.
Yeah, so I'll touch upon that. It's very interesting that we're talking about SMEs and even startups. I mean, and this is really what this conference is about. And that's why it's so important to be able to speak to you on this. Because 5G has a fundamental difference from 4G with regards to being a platform, like you mentioned, Paul. So 5G is really a platform for connectivity. So if you think about 2G, 3G, and 4G as a service that operators are delivering to you, 5G becomes much more a platform that you can connect into. And how to do that is through something, it's a little bit technical, but it's called network slicing. So effectively it means that our operator customers can provide 5G or in fact it will be extended to 4G as well as a network slicing. So if you want to provide your service as an SME, you want to use a connectivity in some way, you connect into the operator's network, you define what type of service you want, what type of quality, and how long you want it, and then you spin it up, and then you spin it down. So dynamically, you can do network slicing. And how to do that as an external party is through something called APIs, an API exposure. And 5G is very powerful in that aspect, that our operator customers can use this as a platform to connect to enterprises and SMEs and startups. It's really exciting. And that is effectively an extension of what we're doing with Singapore Poly here in Singapore. We have something we call a garage. So we've launched a Singtel and Ericsson garage together with the Singapore Poly, where companies in Singapore can try out their applications, see how they work for 5G, spin them up, test it out, and if it works great, then we continue with that.
Well,
Maybe I think Mustafa's got.
Yes,
I also want to add a few sentences to Ludvig.
I think the SMEs, a lot of people will be wanting to
I
do
fully
this.
agree, because we are Innovation Fest and there are a lot of startup companies and they have very innovative ideas. Especially there is one booth there focused on mobility innovation. And I agree with Ludvig and Paul, with this new platform, with this new opportunity, there will be more opportunities for SMEs or startups to develop some innovative ideas and to start new businesses.
Right. So 5G is a platform. 5G is fast. 5G is probably designed with security and privacy in mind, because that's what it's saying. So the question really now is that how will industry, how will you guys in the audience, when you deploy your services, think of ways of riding on this platform and using it in order to serve your ultimate customers or in order to serve yourselves? I think that probably is the core message. We haven't heard anything about cost as yet, about costing, about money. Is it going to be an expensive system to deploy, or is it? Let's leave that aside for a moment, I think, right? But we have about 5 minutes left on today's forum. Is there any questions from the audience? Do you have any burning issue about 5G? I think if you do, just raise your hands. I think somebody will come and give you a mic. No? Oh dear, okay. Right, so no questions. I would just ask, I think, my panelists here one last question. Do you think that there is a possibility that with 5G being in place, we would literally cut the cord? We cut the cord to television, to pay TV these days. We cut the cord to the home phones, the phones that we have at home. Do you think that we would actually come to a point where we would cut the cord to a fixed line, whatever be that line, of internet connectivity to our homes?
All right, so again, over here, our view, 5G, as I said earlier, is it's a network of networks, right? So it is a convergence of wireline and the wireless networks together, right? When I say that 4G, by the way, is going to be here for quite some time, right? So 4G will be a part of this network, and so will be wireline, right? 5G will be supplementing in terms of it gives the wireless service providers an area to compete with the cable TV providers offering the fixed wireless access. To answer your question very specifically, currently you get your high-speed internet services, your video services through your cable service provider. With 5G, the wireless operators now have a capability to offer those same services, the Netflix, all other OTT services over the 5G wireless network, right? So there is competition, and that's always healthy for the consumer because you have multiple choices to choose from now.
Maybe I'll touch upon that as well. You mentioned fixed wireless access. So cutting the cord, absolutely. The cord is going to be cut in 5G because there's no other technology that provides that type of speed before. So this is particularly relevant for residentials. I don't think for enterprises, there's still a limitation in uplink speeds in 5G. It will never be as fast as fiber, especially for the uplink. But for residentials, absolutely. And fixed wireless access that was mentioned by Vishant, this is what most of the deployments today for 5G have been. So, and I'll speak a bit from experience there. You know, there's really only a handful of 5G networks out there that are live today. And 9 out of those networks are Ericsson technology. So really, almost all of the 5G networks there are Ericsson technology. And most of those are fixed wireless access. This is the first application. But it doesn't mean that it stops there. You know, it's all these other services that are coming. But cutting the cord is a real big promise for 5G.
Actually, to me, that's actually quite interesting, you know, because it is our telcos, our incumbent telcos that offers us the wire, the fibers. It is also our incumbent telcos who will actually be offering us wireless. And therefore, to me, either way, the telcos win. I mean, you know, they will earn my money either way. Paul, you were going to say something.
You don't want to really go into the match of how many networks we've got, do you? I would hate to go down that path, I'm sorry. So we're not going to go there. It would be embarrassing. Let's not go there. So I 100% agree with the fixed wireless access, yes. In fact, when I was mentioning about the first low-hanging fruit, which is about cost structure, the second component is all about FWA. And as Ludvig mentioned, it's the most lowest hanging fruit for an operator to get new money. Basically cash and carry. I build a base station here, everybody's home within a kilometre or 2 or 3, depending upon the frequency you're using, depending upon the amount of MIMO you're using, you can get 10, 50, 100 megs, 300 megs if you really want tomorrow. Fibre, it takes time, and 65% of all the cost goes in the ground, which is a waste of money, waste of resource, waste of everything. And for enterprise, it's quite clear the uplink, downlink, yes? But wireless is a fixed amount of resource. So today, maybe a couple of people are using virtual reality. In 5 years, it will be absolutely commonplace, and so too will augmented reality be used. And if everybody needs, through just VR, perhaps a couple of 100 megs, AR, you're going to need significantly more. And we're going to not invite the 4 of us on stage, we're going to be holograms. And there you're going to need between 2 and 10 gig. So those things are happening, and they're within the next couple of years, okay? Really, within the next couple of years. We already do demonstrations across one end of Russia to the other end demonstrating exactly this. So that's now, in this future. So we don't think it's a replacement for fibre, but it grabs the cash quickly. Why do we need cash? Because we need to fuel, remember, they're commercial companies, the telecom enterprises, and they need to fuel the capital expansion costs to provide all the services to everybody. It's a nice little vicious circle that we're caught in and we need. So certainly not in Singapore, but in other countries, developing countries, which is the best way to connect? To connect rural areas, I've just mentioned 5G is cheaper and fixed wireless access is perfect. So you can do that very quickly. But as users become more sophisticated and use more sophisticated services, or you start through this ubiquitous connectivity into remote and rural areas, you start changing the way manufacturing is done. So suddenly you don't need to have a big manufacturing center, it can be distributed. I mean, you have 3D printing, you can print up the microphone, your phones, the badges, 1,000 kilometers from here. I don't need to mine the materials in Zimbabwe, ship them to China to be manufactured, ship them back to South Africa or to Singapore, right? Completely, the logistics flow will change. This is what happens. So because of this, fiber will start to deploy at a different rate. So really we see 5G as the front runner for the cash flow to fuel this, and then it will be by industry, by sector, where it makes financial sense, and where the business model says, I need a gig up or I need 10 gig down, and I don't really have enough bandwidth. You know, not every country can be fortunate to have all the spectrum freely available, I mean, to the operators. In some countries you have a lot of operators, in some countries you have 1 or 2. Some countries have liberalized spectrum and it's very cheap, in other countries they pay a lot of money for it. They're all considerations as to whether fiber and or mobile. But very specifically, 5G will lead this revolution to provide fiber-like services very quickly. And that's what stimulates industry and economy.
So it's not exactly replacing, it's complementary, and that we see a future for both 5G as well as fiber services living together side by side. Thank you. So with that, I think I see a flashing red light in front of me. Time is up. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, and would you please offer all my panelists here a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you so much to our panelists.